Hello everyone, it's thomasjujube, and today I'm going to be talking about Lupinranger vs Patoranger, the latest Super Sentai season that has just concluded its airing on television. This season has been very interesting and has had lots of cool and new ideas to the Tokusatsu universe. Today, I'm going to be giving my review for the show and giving my thoughts on the overall season. But before we get to the video, let me know what you thought of Lupinranger vs Patoranger in the comments, on Discord, and on Twitter. Now, let's get into it by taking a look at Lupinranger vs Patoranger before it went on the air. Like most seasons, there was no big speculation on the season until the first trademark for the show. Or in this case, should I say trademarks? Instead of the usual trademark that Toei releases, this time there were two trademarks for two teams. This of course set the Toku fandom into a frenzy. Why would Toei trademark two names for Sentai teams? Are we getting a double season, two teams at once? Then the names were translated and we realized there was some sort of cops and robbers theme going on here. From there, we had a lot of interesting rumors about the story between the two themes and the two teams. One rumor that was really interesting suggested that the two would function almost completely independent of each other, with the season essentially being two separate shows that aired alternatively. While taking place in the same world, there would be no interactions between the two teams, and they would have separate arsenals and gear as well. The only through line between the two would be a ranger that was a member of the Lupinrangers, who was really an undercover agent for the Patrangers. At episode 20 of both shows, or episode 40 overall, the two teams would join forces and their arsenal would then be able to interact and combine with each other due to the new fourth quarter toys. Eventually though, the suits and mecha of the team were leaked online in catalog scans. The Dial Fighters and Trigger Machine's capabilities in the Verse Changer disproved the theories of the toys not joining until the fourth quarter, but we still didn't have any crazy story rumors confirmed. Even when we eventually got the official story announcement that brought up the existence of the Lupin collection and introduced us to the Ganglers, the story still wasn't disproved. It seemed like it was set to be the story of Lupin vs Pato, until the press conference dropped with the trailer. We got our cast and the story was fully revealed, showing that we would be getting one show with both teams interacting and fighting many times throughout the show's run. With that, all that was left to do was wait for the season to begin. So then the series began and it was awesome. The first episode was great and already showed the reason for the Lupinrangers becoming thieves and the great skill they had in battle. I also liked how the Patrangers weren't immediately introduced alongside them and were given a gradual introduction over the first two episodes. Everything was really awesome and the season seemed great to become a great one. We got some great episodes afterwards with the characters getting some focus, seeing the two teams interact, and we even got an episode where the Lupinrangers' identities were almost revealed to the Patrangers. But then, all that just stopped. Honestly, for nearly the entire show, I felt like we were just going in circles. Character focused episode, Honore Kaito, lesson learned, and next episode, character focused, Honore Keisatsu, lesson learned, end. It didn't really feel like much was happening here. Every so often we would get a little bit more plot or something big going on, like when Zamigo, Destra, or Dogranio himself had a direct impact on the episode, or when we got the introduction of a new verse vehicle. When Noel was introduced, it seemed like the series was going to get so much more interesting. This was a character that had their own goal, playing both sides and infiltrating both teams. Uncovering the mystery behind Noel and seeing both sides not give him all of their faith would have been an interesting idea to use to shake up the show throughout its entire course. But literally after the 3 episodes used to fully introduce Ranger X, we revert right back to the usual formula of the show. Now, to be honest, I did enjoy most of these episodes. I'll talk about the characters in a second, but since this was a nice cast, I never hated seeing any of them. The season just felt stale when we never saw anything big happen during the episodes or saw any progression of the plot. There were some really great moments in the show, but my biggest problem is that until the end, nothing really big happened. For the most part, the show was just all filler. The Patrangers take forever to find out the identity of the Lupinrangers, and there is nothing that really shakes up the status quo of the show and makes it change. Throughout its run, there were some rumors that a third team would enter the fray, or earlier hints that the identity of the Lupinrangers would be exposed And personally, I think that any of these would have made the show much better, because as it stands, for the most part, Lupin vs. Pato just stays the same for most of its time on the air and is just too much filler. I'm not asking for the biggest changes ever, but just a little bit of change or a little more plot to the show would have been nice as well. Of course, plot isn't all to the show, so now let's get into the characters. The Lupinrangers are the characters we meet first in the show. I'd say that they are all interesting and awesome in different ways. Kairi seemed at first he was going to start out as a generic happy-go-lucky Red Ranger, but he actually started out mature and only grew throughout the series. It was very refreshing to have a Red Ranger that seemed like a born leader, and didn't have some stupid catchphrase or could be intolerable for most of the time. Toma was also a great character for me. Not only was he a badass, but he arguably had the most loss out of our 3 Lupinrangers since he lost his wife to be. As such, his characterization felt very real and believable. Then on the direct opposite of this scale, we have Umika. She was essentially the typical Sentai girl of the season since she had the bubbliest, happiest personality out of the 3 and probably both teams. It was funny seeing her constantly avoiding Sakuya in his attempts to woo her over. However, she also had her great moments, like when she actually used Sakuya to rescue the other 2 Lupinrangers from a gangler, and ended up being the first of the 3 willing to reveal her identity to the world. Overall, I think that the 3 Lupinrangers were great characters. I like how they were all given a common goal, so you know why they are fighting and stealing from the ganglers. The biggest problem I have with them is that we never really see them actually steal stuff from people, just the ganglers. I think that if we were shown this, it would have really shown the change these 3 had to take in order to save their loved ones, and it would have developed the characters a lot more. Along with this, it would have given a better reason for the Patrangers always trying to arrest them. Speaking of the Patrangers, they were also a nice set of characters. Funny enough, they were actually more lighthearted than the Lupinrangers in most cases, despite being a police team and the other being a team of thieves. Kairi wasn't too much of a typical Red Ranger for you. Well, Keiichiro's here to be over the top with Onore Kaito! Thankfully, this toned down as the series went on, along with his normal over-the-top personality. Sakuya also presented a perfect mirror of Toma. Instead of being the straight man of the team, like second in commands usually are, he's the comic relief of the Patrangers. It was enjoyable to see him constantly flirt with Umika and provide a lot of the last for the show, and it was actually heartbreaking to see his reaction when it was revealed that Umika was a Lupinranger. Then we have Tsukasa as the most mature, serious, and straightforward member of either team, as a mirror to Umika being the happiest and bubbliest out of either team. I never noticed it until I sat here writing the script and breaking down the characters, but the 3 members of each team are almost exact opposites of each other. That's awesome, and it really goes to show the effort put into making these teams opposites of each other. Despite the Patrangers feeling a bit stale, I thought that they were also fun to watch because they weren't some usual straight man police team all the time, and as I mentioned, I like the mirror with the Lupins. Then we just have Noel, who is my personal favorite character, probably above Tsukasa. He just has a lot of personality and charisma, and arguably has the most interesting backstory, having been raised by Arsene Lupin himself and being part of some long-forgotten race that used to live alongside the ganglers. I really liked when he was first introduced, and we had both teams questioning which side he was on, until it was just forgotten. Oops. Overall, I liked all of the main characters that we learned about over the course of the show. The main complaint I see about these characters is that the Lupinrangers receive too much focus. And I agree with these people. It's true. The Lupinrangers do get more focus episodes and arguably more screen time throughout the entire show. If someone runs some calculations with that, please let me know, because I'd really like to see the hard details, but I think it's pretty obvious they get more screen time. Even if they were given most of the upgrades, it wouldn't have been too hard to give some story focus to the police officers as well. I guess we'll just have to chalk up the big thief focus to them stealing it from the Patrangers. Oh well. I also want to talk about some of the villains and the side characters. Our side characters are Kukure, Hilltop, and Jim Carter. Hilltop and Jim Carter do absolutely nothing, so there's absolutely nothing to talk about with them. That's their character arc is literally, I'm a police officer and we help out the Patrangers because they're the main characters. Kukure was such a wasted opportunity. He seemed so interesting. People speculated he was a gangler. There was so much mystery around him. There was so much I could have done with this character, and then he's just ugh. And then he's just the same race as Noel, like some long forgotten alien race or something. There's nothing really interesting with him at all. Not asking for a character arc, but there was a lot of mystery built up around him, and then their answer was just, bam, look, that's it. Alright, are you happy now? The Ganglers were very cool in this. I liked all their different and crazy unique designs. The safes to hold the Lupin collection pieces were very interesting ideas, and I think it was pulled off very well. Gaucher is our typical ranger villain that grows the monster. Gaucher's fine. Destra was very, very interesting as well, and I think it was delivered on throughout the series. It was cool seeing him manipulate everything around him so that he could get what he wanted. Zamigo is basically just like Destra, except he's a loose cannon, and I really like Zamigo. He's probably my favorite villain, just because he has that rivalry with the Lupinrangers that made for a lot of amazing scenes and interactions throughout the show. He's the reason for the Lupinrangers becoming Lupinrangers, and I think that's awesome. Then we had the big boss, Dogranio Yabun, I think that's how you pronounce that. He's flat. He's just a flat character for most of the show, and I think that's fine. You don't always need to have Thanos with super deep personalities, super fleshed out. It's okay to just have a villain that's just a villain, in my opinion. And he does get a little bit of personality in the last 5 episodes when we see him revert to his normal personality, as Amigo put it. And it was cool to see him become ruthless in the last arc of the show, because Dogranio sensed the show was almost over and decided he should get off his ass and finally do something. The last thing I would like to talk about relating to the season is the aesthetics and production of the show. I really like the look of the Lupinranger suits, and once again, I really love the effort put into making the two teams seem like mirrors of each other. One team's suits is primarily the Ranger's color, then black, and the other is primarily white, then the Ranger's color. One team uses land vehicles for their gimmick, and the other uses aerial vehicles for theirs. One team flips their gimmick up in the changer, and the other flips it down. Simple little things that show the two teams use the same set of gear, but in totally different ways. And I love the simple use of an X to convey the switching of teams for Lupin X and Patranger X. The primary Megazords are cool as well. I enjoy how dynamic they look, and the use of Good Striker as a base body is also very cool, despite the fact it negated a mecha versus mecha battle, which is the one thing I was looking forward to in the show. X-Emperor is pretty cool as well, for the same reasons as Ranger X. Then all the other Megazords of the season are just so lazy and stupid. I mean, for crying out loud, this arm is just a freaking crane slapped on. The final Megazords were cool, but for me it was just too little, too late in my opinion, especially when they are the last Megazords of the season. I sincerely hope the massive final mecha trope isn't dead. Thankfully, the show also had amazing fight choreography and cinematography. The first fights between the teams are probably some of the best fights in Sentai, and I hope we get to see this caliber of filming carry on and cross over into Kamen Rider. The music of the show is also pretty amazing. The two teams get distinctly different soundtracks that can really set the tone of a scene, and once again, they mirror each other. I mean, every time the Lupins change, we get this awesome music that plays, and the Patrangers get a different version of that music that plays. It's really cool. And along with that, the theme song, while not necessarily perfect in my opinion, it's actually 2 songs mixed together, one for each team, and you can actually separate them and listen to them separately or combine them together to get the show's theme. That's great, and it's so cool. But of course, production can't make a show, so that's why I'm just mentioning this last. Overall, I wouldn't call Lupinranger vs Patoranger a bad season of Super Sentai. However, I wouldn't say that it is a particularly amazing one either. I think that the ideas behind it are amazing and wildly unique, and while we got many great moments that couldn't have happened without it, I personally don't think that they were used to their fullest potential. Perhaps if some of those early rumors actually came true, like a third team or maybe the split shows, then maybe I would have a different opinion. Because currently, for me, the plot slowed down for pretty much the entire season, and despite all the character-focused episodes, I never felt that said characters really grew too much. Only every so often, and in the last 5 episodes, did we really see stuff start to get really interesting, and plot lines began to come together. And I think that if that started to happen a little earlier or more often, then the show would have been much better. But on a rewatch of the series, maybe if you cut out certain episodes, then I'm sure that the series will be much, much better and be the amazing Sentai that I think it deserves to be. Because as it stands, Kaito Sentai Lupinranger vs Keisatsu Sentai Patoranger is just a subpar to good Sentai. There is definitely room for improvement, but I would not call the show bad by any stretch of the imagination, and I will miss it. I hope that sometime in the future Toei attempts to try these ideas in some form again, and hopefully learns from their mistakes with this season. But if they do, then I think they should wait probably at least 10 years, because if they don't, we're going to end up having the entire Sentai fandom yelling at Toei for just reusing ideas.